So in this video, I'm going to show you some animations I've been working on for this quadruped mech. In the last video, I showed you the rig that we had. It came out pretty nicely. So in this video, we are going to take a look at some of the animations I've made using this rig. Here is the quick melee animation. And the way that I normally implement animations in Unity that are supposed to be quick and responsive for the user is I will give it 5 frames to interpolate into. So maybe this guy is running really fast or jumping through the air. So the first 5 frames are going to interpolate into this position where he's basically reaching back as far as he can. And then we play the animation to frame 9. So maybe I will put a little collider here at his fingertip and start detecting collisions at frame 6 through frame 10, or maybe we just detect it on frame 9, depending on whether he's supposed to be able to do damage all the way through this swing. Kind of looks like he would. So we let the frames play from 5 to 10 at full weight, and then we spend the rest of the time blending back out of the animation to frame 20, where he can go back into a run or a jump or whatever he's in the middle of doing. So in order to be very responsive for the user, the interpolation in time at 5 frames is about as short as you can make it without it look like the animation is just popping. Sometimes we can use maybe 3, but 5 is pretty good at 30 frames a second. That's pretty quick. The whole animation is 20 frames, so the whole animation takes 2/3 of a second, which is pretty responsive for the user. Now maybe they get a power up or something, or the animation just feels slow. All these animations are made to go up to about 2 times speed. So this one's actually playing super quick at 2 times speed, but maybe that's a good thing in the game if they have some turbocharge running. But I would guess that the 1 speed, at least in the first level, is going to be about what we want. We have these animations that go into and out of crouch. So this is if the player is trying to duck behind cover or something, they can crouch down. Maybe we want to crouch like this to get a more accurate shot with the missile battery or some machine guns mounted on him or something. And then crouch to root is very similar. You can pop back up. So in this case, he will be resting while the user is holding down the crouch button here at frame 0, and then we'll basically start interpolating into whatever he's supposed to do throughout the whole animation. The rest to root, this one is more for maybe cinematics or an automated game sequence where the player's taking a break, maybe if there's no input from the player for 20 seconds or 30 seconds or something, then the crawler just decides to take a rest, so he can basically lay down and rest and power down. Same thing for power up. So maybe once the pilot's in and ready, the mech is ready to go, we turn on the power and play the animation to get into his root position. The jump is a really interesting animation. I'll tell you guys the way that I like to implement the jump. There's obviously a lot of ways you can do this in any game. But there's 2 major problems with jumping in video games. So the first one is the jump is supposed to feel very responsive for the user, but also very powerful. And you have to wind up for a jump, right? You have to crouch down and get low and ready to jump in order to jump really high. But you can't really do that with an action that's supposed to happen, only split seconds after the user presses the button. So I always just get the character as low as possible in the first 5 frames of the animation. So, again, you can imagine this guy running or, getting blasted backwards by a missile or something, and it's time to jump. So the first 5 frames are going to interpolate from whatever he's doing into this jumping pose. And then we jump from 5 to about 20. So 5 to 20 is him going through the air, and then at frame 20, this is basically a 1-frame looping animation of him falling. And then the second problem is we have to know when he's going to land if he's going to get ready to land. So without assuming that he's going to land at the same height that he jumped from, because maybe he jumped off a cliff or jumped up onto a ledge, we want to try and detect if he's going to land and how well he can land. And normally that requires some sort of fancy predictive collider out in front of him and below him, or some way to tell when he's going to land, so that we can get him ready to land, which is basically from frame, I would say frame 25 to 30 here. He's puts his appendages down, ready to land. Or, if we didn't have that predictive sort of collision, we could interpolate from frame 30 through 35 when he lands. So as soon as he actually hits the ground, we want to start interpolating like this. But that means that he's landing and putting his limbs down all the way to the ground at the same time. It'll look like he lands really hard instead of getting ready to land in an intelligent way, but it's still believable. So anyway, then frame 30 to 35 is the land, and then we interpolate back out into whatever he's supposed to be doing, like running or jumping again. So the whole thing put together. I also use an extra animation layer here just to simulate what it would look like with an upward force that we add in the game. So the upward force obviously happens right at frame 10. At frame 10, we accelerate upwards, not linearly, but all of a sudden we just apply a force straight upwards. And that looks something like this. So this animation layer is only his upward velocity. And in order to get it right, we really want to make sure to make sure that these curves, don't look like this, because it's supposed to be a acceleration pointing that happens all of a sudden right at frame 10. And the same thing is true for landing. He's supposed to be coming down at full speed by the time he lands. So the jump's always going to look really weird if you try and simulate a force without taking care of these curves. Let's move on to the walk cycle. Walk cycles are always fun. This is what he looks like. The way I like to do walk cycles is to use basically like a conveyor belt. So that way I can make sure that the feet aren't sliding, and that the loop looks good. All the contacts and the way that all four legs hit the ground is, I'll post a link in the comments, but there's a lot of good tutorials out there. I find the one that's the most clear and makes the most sense to me, I'll put here in the comments for, if you're trying to animate all four legs at once. It's supposed to be sort of throwing his hips around a little bit, moving all that weight. And again, the nice thing about this ground conveyor belt is that you can move it. You can just rotate it in any direction. So here's the forward left. And if you're going to use a blend tree, maybe the user has a analog joystick and can actually be moving in any one of the 360 degrees or something like that. You're going to want to blend between all of these animations, which means you want all of the foot contacts to be on the same frame. So the front left is always the first contact of the animation, and it repeats. So they're all the same length and they all have the same contacts on the same keyframes. So here's a strafe. And again, all these animations are made to be basically go from a little bit slower than they are, maybe 75% speed, all the way up to like 2 times the speed. So if the player is sprinting or running, with some kind of turbo power up, then let me go ahead and show you what that might look like here. Turn off this ground visibility. So here's 2 times speed. And here's what it looks like when he's running backwards. Here's half speed. Moving backwards and moving forwards. And yeah, I'm really liking how well the rig is actually moving all the pistons and the joints and everything. I haven't noticed any problems with flipping or extra rotations that shouldn't be happening with all of the axes and constraints the way they are. So that's the animation video for this mechanical quadruped. Thanks guys for watching.